Hey there, Brent Wofford here, Arizona's Rad Realtor with Keller Williams, Arizona Realty here in Northern Arizona, and I'm coming at you today with an update on the recent changes that have been implemented by the National Association of Realtors, changes that are going to affect you as a home buyer moving forward that started nationwide on August 17th, 2024. The main thing with this is that you as a buyer are going to have to sign a representation agreement with your realtor of choice before you even get to step foot through the front door of the first home that you want to look at. That's the main thing. There's a couple other things that have been changed as well. We'll dive into those in a minute, but yeah, let's get started. I've got a couple forms I want to go over with you that are the examples of the forms here in Arizona. So this video is Arizona specific. If you're in a different state, you'll need to get with a realtor in that state. Let's dive into the first form that you're going to see from your realtor before you go out and look at houses. Let's go over that real quick. It's going to have the firm name or the broker's name on there, so real estate brokerage, acting through both of the licensees or the realtors that you're working with. Oftentimes, if you're working with a solo agent, is what we call them, or a single realtor, you're just going to have one. But if you're acting through an agent that's on a team, oftentimes you'll see it listed out with two agents on there. Just in case your primary agent's not available, the backup agent can also fill in and go show you some houses on their behalf. So diving right into it, you're signing an agreement saying that you acknowledge that you're hiring your own broker as a buyer. So the main thing is, a broker other than the seller's broker can agree with the buyer to act as their broker for the buyer. In these situations, the buyer's broker is not representing the seller, even if the buyer's broker is receiving compensation for services rendered from that seller's broker or the seller directly, either in full or part from the seller or through the seller's broker, right? So the main thing is that a buyer's broker has the fiduciary duties of loyalty, obedience, disclosure, confidentiality, and accounting in dealings with the buyer. That means us as your realtor on the buyer's side are providing these things for you directly. Other potential buyers represented by the broker may consider, make offers on, or acquire an interest in the same or similar properties as you are taking a look at. Just so you know, it doesn't mean that just because you're looking at a property that I can't personally show the same property to another buyer who I'm also representing. In part 3 of this form, it goes over broker representing both seller and buyer. We call that a limited representation agreement or limited representation broker, meaning that the broker is acting as a neutral third party between yourself and the seller. So an example is, I'm a Keller Williams agent. If there's a house that you want to go see that's also listed with Keller Williams Arizona Realty, we're absolutely going to go see it. You just need to know up front that I work for you as your agent. The listing agent works for the seller as their agent, and our broker is a neutral third party in that process. So just reading off here, line 24, the broker will not, without written authorization, disclose to the other party that the seller will accept a price or terms other than stated in the listing, or that the buyer will accept a price or terms other than offered. That's very important. So it's basically saying that your information that you have with me stays with us, is confidential. I'm not letting the listing agent, even though they're within my brokerage, I'm not letting them know what you're willing to do or what your bottom line is or anything like that, because I owe you fiduciary duty as your realtor, as your buyer's realtor, and the listing agent owes fiduciary duty to the seller as their realtor on the seller side. Go down to line 36. The duties of the broker in a real estate transaction do not relieve the seller or the buyer from the responsibility to protect their own interests. The seller and the buyer should carefully read all agreements to ensure that the documents adequately express their understanding of the transaction. Going on down, also agency election does not establish broker compensation. So we're not talking about any fees that the real estate company charges in this. This is just simply stating that, this agent is going to work for you on your behalf and is going to do XYZ. So getting down to the XYZs here, line 46, buyer election. Undersigned elects to have the broker do the following. So me, when I'm working with a buyer, I always have these two boxes checked that you can see on your screen. So represent the buyer as the buyer's broker. So me and my broker would represent you as your broker solely if the listing is with a different firm, a different agency. However, if the listing that you want to see is within our agency, go down to line 50. We're going to show you properties listed with our firm, and you agree that the broker shall act as an agent for both the buyer and the seller. So back to the neutral third party that I was saying, my broker that oversees me would be the neutral third party, provided that the seller consents to limited representation. So this has to be something that you would agree to and also the seller would agree to in order for us to be able to have the broker be a neutral third party. Buyer and seller's informed consent should be acknowledged in a separate writing other than the purchase contract. And we do have another addendum for that. I'm not going to go over in this video. Yeah, that concludes this form. This is the first form that you'll see, again, called the Real Estate Agency Disclosure and Election. All right, now we're going to dive into a brand new form that was drafted by the Arizona Association of Realtors. And we've been implementing this form actually since August 1st, even though the changes nationwide went into effect on August 17th. So this form is called the Buyer-Broker Agreement to Show Property. When you're going to see this form is oftentimes right before the first time that you're going to go out with an agent to see houses. This is one of two forms that us as realtors can use to satisfy that National Association of Realtors nationwide mandate of the disclosure and having you sign before going and showing property. So I'm going to speak just for myself right now. This is not a representation of all the agents in my office, in my brokerage, or within Arizona. This is just how I'm personally going to be utilizing these forms. So as a buyer, if you hire me to be your realtor, the first time we go out to see property, we're going to do this agreement to show property here. So right at the top, your name's going to go there where buyer is, broker, real estate brokerage will go there. In my instance, it's going to be Keller Williams Arizona Realty. You're going to have an agent, and then you're going to have a co-agent sometimes, like we talked about earlier. Working with me personally, you're going to see my name and you're going to see my team leader's name there. Reason being for that is because if I'm incapacitated, if I go on vacation, if I'm not able to be reached, you have a backup person that you can go through for all of your needs. Going on down, line 7, term. So agents can fill this out with whatever they want. Obviously, the agreement's going to commence on day 1. Day 1 is going to be the day that we first meet and go look at properties. And then it'll expire whenever that agent sets it to expire. So working with me personally, if it's the first time we're working together and you're coming in for the weekend, I'm probably going to write this for 3 days. If you're just coming into town for the day, then I'm just going to only write this as a 1-day agreement, just saying, hey, I'm going to be representing you today or this weekend to get into properties, and you're not looking at properties with anybody else other than me while you're here in town. Next down the list is property. So depending on if you're looking at residential or land, I'm going to check those boxes, or commercial too, check that box as well. So agency, the agency relationship between the broker and the buyer determines how the broker will work on the buyer's behalf and will be documented in the form we just went over, which is the Real Estate Agency Disclosure and Election form. Next thing is broker compensation is not set by law, nor by any board, association of realtors, multiple listing service, or in any manner other than as fully negotiated between broker and buyer in this agreement. What does that mean? Let's unpack that a little bit. That means that us as agents, we can set our own fees, much like lawyers' offices do. They have their own fees that they set. And sometimes those fees vary based on the client, the scope of the work, the needs, so on and so forth. So just know that, I'm not going to talk about compensation right now in this video. That's a conversation that you and I need to have separate because everybody's situation is unique. So we need to go over what that situation looks like first before deciding what the compensation is going to be. If the broker represents the buyer in the purchase of a property, as indicated on the purchase contract that was signed prior to the expiration date of this agreement, the buyer agrees to compensate the broker as follows. So we're going to put a pin in this before I get into the actual compensation. The way it has worked in the past is that sellers, not all the time because they were never required to do so, but sellers have often offered buyer's agent compensation directly to the buyer's agent, making our services not cost you as a buyer, right? So basically saying we would, in the past prior to now, we would go out, we would look at houses, we would write a contract, and in the MLS already, we could see what was being offered for compensation as a buyer's agent for helping you as a buyer to buy the house. If you're not familiar with what this is, say you're a first-time home buyer, it was basically a reward fee that sellers were offering out there as a reward for, hey, an example is, I've lost my puppy. I want somebody to help me find my puppy. Please bring my puppy home and I'll pay you a $2,000 reward. Just an example of puppies. So if I were to bring, the seller, their puppy, being you as a buyer, to come and to buy their property, in the past, they would already have that reward. It would already be set, and that's how we would get compensated on your behalf. So we were still getting paid. It just wasn't being charged to you as the buyer. Now, with the way the settlement has gone, the compensation offering in the MLS has completely gone away nationwide. So there will be no more compensation advertised in the MLS. That doesn't mean that sellers are not offering compensation as a buyer's agent or willing to pay for your buyer agent fees. It just means that they're no longer allowed to advertise those in the MLS. So we can go about that a couple different ways. One is the sellers can still offer it, but they have to advertise that off of the MLS, which is actually pretty complicated to do. Or they can already have in mind what they're willing to pay as a seller for buyer agent services, and then we would negotiate that into the contract, which we do have a form for that, and I'll go over that in a minute as well. So let's dive back into this form, compensation. So as a buyer's agent or a buyer realtor, I can be compensated a couple different ways. Let's just kind of run down what that looks like. Some agents are just going to charge a certain percentage of the purchase price. So whatever the price of the home is that you buy, a percent. You see in this example, I just put A because we're not talking about any actual numbers here, just giving you examples. A percentage of the purchase price or the exchange value of the property. Option 2 is do a flat fee. So you could do a specific dollar amount regardless of what the purchase price is, up or down. And again, it's up to the individual agents and brokers on how they want to charge you for their services. Or you've got another one that says other, and other is typically a combination of a percentage plus a fee. Just as an example, if a broker has a transaction processing fee that they charge to process, that the broker charges to process all the paperwork, confirm the accuracy of all that paperwork, that fee might be in addition to your percentage. So this is not a reflection of what I charge right here and what my brokerage charges. And if you're curious about that, then get a hold of me and we'll have a phone conversation about that. Just so you know, a buyer showing instructions. Broker shall show property listings that fit buyer's criteria regardless of compensation offered to broker by seller or seller's broker unless instructed otherwise by you as the buyer in writing. This means that unless you tell me that you don't want to see properties that are not offering a minimum of, say, a percentage of the purchase price that you and I have agreed to, I will send you properties and we will look at properties that it has not been confirmed if the seller is or is not willing to offer any compensation or offer a specific one that we have talked about. And if that is the case, that you specifically don't want to see those properties, which is not what I would recommend, we could talk about that again off of this video. We can talk about that in person or on the phone. You would have to send me an email or a text message, so it is technically in writing. So if necessary, buyer instructs the broker to negotiate broker compensation to be paid by the seller or the seller's broker. Very important. This starts to get into that other form that we're going to talk about here soon. These negotiations shall not jeopardize, delay, or interfere with the initiation, processing, or finalizing of a transaction. So that means that compensation is not to get in the way of you being able to buy a house. Then again, at the bottom, you've got your name. If you have a co-buyer, their name's on there. You sign it. the real estate brokerage. I sign it as your agent, as your realtor, and if you have a co-agent, they also sign this form. And then once we get this form signed, we're good to go. We can go out and see properties at any time within this day window that we've set up, the term window on line 7. So that's it for this showing agreement is what we're calling it, but it's a buyer broker agreement to show property. And like I said earlier, not all agents will use this form, and different agents will have different processes when it comes to having you sign an agreement before going out to show properties. So let's go on to the next form. All right, this form is option number 2 for us as realtors to use before going out and showing you homes. So like I said, while going over the last form, if you're coming in for the weekend or just a day, we are gonna use that first form, which is the showing agreement. And then if you're wanting to go out, or actually, let me go back a little bit. So say everything goes great on that and you find the home of your dreams and you wanna move forward, we do also have to have this employment agreement. This is the actual form hiring me to be your realtor and my broker to represent you with the purchase of your new home. This is the buyer broker exclusive employment agreement saying that you are exclusively working with me and my broker to help you obtain your new home. So your name's gonna be on there, your co-buyer's name's gonna be on there, brokerage, my name, my co-agent's name is gonna be on there. Term, the agreement's gonna commence on the day 1, so that'll be the same day that we had on the last form, which was the showing agreement. Expiration date on here, it's going to vary by agent. If you're working with me specifically, we're going to work together to come up with a date, but oftentimes I do a 6-month agreement whenever we're doing this exclusive employment agreement. So going down, you would be hiring me to help you locate residential property, land, commercial property, whatever the case is. Those appropriate boxes are going to get checked in the following geographical area. So I only work within Arizona. I don't work in any other state besides Arizona. So it's going to be in the specific counties in Arizona that you're interested in looking at. I'll list those here. Agency relationship is going to be the same as set forth in the real estate agency disclosure and election form that we already went over. Again, going to read the bold stuff here. Property viewings. Buyer agrees to work exclusively with broker and be accompanied by broker on broker's first visit to any property. This also includes new construction homes. If broker does not accompany buyer on the first visit to any property, including a model home, like I said, at new construction, a new home lot, or open house, including open houses, held by a builder, seller, or other real estate broker, the buyer acknowledges that the builder, seller, or seller's broker may refuse to compensate me and my broker, which will eliminate any credit against the agreed upon broker compensation listed below. Buyer agrees to review the Arizona Department of Real Estate Buyer Advisory to assist in buyer's inspections and investigations. So at the same time that you are provided with this form, you will also be getting what's called a buyer advisory packet. I can send that via PDF over email to you, or if you're meeting with me here in person in the office, I'll give you a hard copy of that. So you have that for your records and to read through. Line 25, broker compensation is not set by law, nor by any board, association of realtors, multiple listing services, or in any manner other than is fully negotiated between broker and buyer in this agreement. Back to the last form that we just talked about, it's going to be the same exact thing. There is no set compensation, even in our office, nationwide, locally, within Keller Williams, within other brokerages. It is a direct negotiation between yourself as the buyer and me. And like I said, we have our fees that are going to vary based on the situation for you as a buyer. So we'll get into that via a phone call, like I said, or a meeting here in person, but we're not going to go over that right here in this video. This video is just for informational purposes. Retainer fee. Some agents may charge you a retainer fee. Why? Well, a reason an agent can charge you a retainer fee is if you're coming in town, for the weekend and you want to see 20 homes, that agent has no guarantee that you're actually going to buy a home or even like the area. So they could charge you a retainer fee of whatever dollar amount they want to. And so I'll just run down this example. So if they're going to do that, they'd check the box here. They'd put in the retainer fee amount here. and then that needs to be paid pretty much up front. And it's earned when paid, so that means you're not getting refunded, you're not gonna see that money back. However, that fee could get applied or credited against the broker compensation below if you do wind up purchasing a home with the agent that you're agreeing to this form with. Broker compensation, so getting into that, it's very similar to the last form that we just went over, the showing agreement, where the agent can check only one and fill in the compensation. They can either go by a percentage, a flat fee, or another line that has a combination of a percentage and a flat fee. Getting into the boilerplate language here, broker compensation shall be in U.S. currency and paid at the time of and as a condition of closing for purchase or exchange or as otherwise agreed upon in writing. So what does that mean? That means that if you're a buyer and so somehow we can't get the seller to cover all of my broker fees, if they don't cover any of it, if you're not asking for them to cover any of it, or if they only cover part and they don't cover all of it, it will be a line item, a cost, just like a lender fee and a title and escrow fee is to you on your closing statement with the title company. And those will be funds that you'll need to come in with in addition to your down payment at the closing table. Before you sign this agreement, obviously I'm going to send you this agreement. You can read through all the boilerplate language in here, but just so you know, skipping down to line 53, compensation after expiration date. After expiration date of this agreement, buyer agrees to pay broker compensation if within a calendar days, so whatever we agree to, X amount of calendar days after the expiration date of this agreement, buyer enters into an agreement to purchase, exchange, or option any property that was shown or negotiated by the broker on behalf of the buyer during the term of this agreement. What this means is that if our agreement expires and you want to still buy a house that you and I had looked at and we're within this time frame, or if you're not working with me, if you're working with another agent, this still applies to that agent as well. If you're wanting to buy a house that you looked at with that agent and you're still within this time frame, that agent is still your realtor for the purchase. So, and if you don't use them, you could be subject to having to pay their fees on top of the other agent's fees that you use. The rest of this form is pretty much boilerplate language. You do need to know equal housing opportunity. Broker's policy is to abide by all local, state, and federal laws prohibiting discrimination against any individual or group of individuals. Broker may not disclose the racial, ethnic, or religious composition of any neighborhood, community, or building, nor whether persons with disabilities are housed in any home or facility, except that broker may identify housing facilities meeting the needs of a disabled buyer. If you have any questions on that, you can consult Fair Housing Advisory. I will also send you a Fair Housing Advisory form for you to look at and to read through. So the main thing you need to know is that we don't discriminate, and we can't also give you information that could be discriminatory about an owner or a neighborhood or a specific area that you're interested in. So everything's covered by Arizona law. You're gonna get copies of everything that you sign. If you have any other questions about anything in this form, obviously reach out to me. We'll have an off-air conversation about that. And then your information is going to be listed down here: your name, your co-buyer's name, your current address, telephone number, email address, the brokerage that you're working with, the address for that brokerage, and your agent's names. And you're going to sign this form, and your agent is also going to sign this form. Now that we reviewed the broker exclusive employment agreement, let's talk about how I, as a realtor, can get those fees paid on your behalf by the seller. There's a special form called the Seller Compensation Addendum, and this form would accompany the purchase offer that we're going to write, that we're going to negotiate on your behalf whenever you find the house that you want to buy, that we're going to present to the seller. So this form is going to accompany that initial purchase offer. Let's run down it real quick. So the addendum is originated by the buyer. The date on here is going to be the same date as your purchase offer. Your name's going to be on here, the seller's name's going to be on here, the address is going to be on here. And then skipping down to line 9, so check any that apply and fill in the compensation. actually, let's jump back up to line 8, just so you can understand. Seller shall pay broker representing buyer, which is you, they're going to pay me to represent you, the compensation as follows. And it's going to say sale if you're buying, lease if you're renting. So sale, the percentage of the full purchase price. This percentage here doesn't have to match what you have put into your buyer-broker exclusive employment agreement that we just went over. However, most agents like myself are gonna make this match what we've just discussed on that last form. An example of when it wouldn't be is if it is a little bit higher on this form versus your buyer-broker agreement. Any excess funds that go above and beyond what we've already discussed in our employment agreement actually get credited to you as a buyer through escrow. That's not something that I would recommend or that I'm going to be doing with my clients, because there's a different way to go about that if we want to get funds for you, extra funds from the seller for you to help you pay your lender fees and your title and escrow fees. There's actually a spot on the contract called seller concessions to you as a buyer, which would be separate from this. So we can go over that in person or on the phone when we talk and when we meet. So anyways, moving on with this form, sale a percentage of the full purchase price, or if your agent is doing a flat fee that you've agreed to on the buyer broker exclusive employment agreement, then that flat fee would go here instead. Down here on line 14 says check if applicable. It says pursuant to a separate written agreement, which there is another form out there in Arizona called the compensation agreement between brokers, which is not a form that you as a buyer signs. Seller broker has agreed to compensate buyer broker in the amount of blank percentage or the flat fee, which is independent of and in addition to the compensation in this addendum. There are some agents out there, some listing agents out there that are doing this form called the compensation agreement between brokers, which is the way for a listing agent to now advertise that their seller is willing to pay a percentage to buyer broker compensation ahead of time. If we have that form ahead of time, we can check this box and we can fill in the information there. Again, this is going to vary based on your scenario, based on the seller's scenario for the specific property that you choose. There is no way I can say in this video here, this is the specific right way to do this and this is how we will fill this out every single time, because every situation is unique. So just wanted to disclose that right now up front on why I don't have any of this filled out in here, because I don't know if I'm going to get that form from a listing agent or not. And frankly, going back to what we were talking about before in the last form, compensation is not to get in the way of you being able to purchase a home. So whether a listing agent has provided me that form or not actually doesn't matter to me, because I'm going to fill out this compensation addendum either way. Let's go down. Seller and broker explicitly intend brokers to be direct third-party beneficiaries of the contract and or lease agreement pursuant to this addendum and either Section 8F or Section 9G of the contract. The provisions of this addendum shall survive the close of escrow. So going on, if there's any additional terms and conditions, that would be put into there. Again, back to unique situations, circumstances, most times this is going to be left blank. There could be a situation where that gets put in here. So you are going to sign this and your co-buyer is going to sign this. It's going to get presented with the purchase agreement and the seller is going to sign this form as well. I need to note for you that just because we put this form in with a purchase agreement does not mean that a seller is automatically going to agree to it. They can do one of three things. They can accept this and say, yes, they'll sign it, we're good. Or they can counter back with one of two things. The first one being they can say, hey, I'm not willing to pay a percentage, but I will pay C percentage on your behalf. Whatever the difference looks like, and that would be your responsibility as a buyer to come up with the difference, unless there's something that we negotiate at that time. So, and again, that's a case-by-case basis. And just know that if you hire me to be your realtor of choice and to help you with buying your house, we can absolutely work with you on the compensation, because again, my goal is to not let compensation get in the way of you buying your dream home. So the third option is that the seller can just come back in a counteroffer and say, no, there's no way I'm paying for any of your buyer agent fees. And again, if that is the case, you and I need to have a serious conversation, because if they're not willing to pay any of the fees and you can't afford to pay those fees on top of your down payment, we are gonna have to come up with something. So we are gonna have to have that conversation at that time, just so you know. So that covers the forms that you're gonna have to sign with a realtor here in the state of Arizona before you go out on a showing. And just to recap, you only have to sign that first form, the showing agreement, before you actually go get into doors. However, if you are going to be writing an offer on the home that you see and you love it, you're going to wind up also signing that employment agreement to hire the realtor to be your realtor and your broker, and also that seller compensation addendum if you choose to ask for those fees to be comped by the seller. That is not something that you have to ask for, and is not something that we recommend that everybody in every situation ask for. So you need to talk to your individual agent about negotiation tactics. Make sure you're hiring an agent that knows what they're doing when it comes to negotiation and leverage, because this thing could help you in one situation but not help you in another situation. If you have the means to pay for your own agent fees, it may be more beneficial for you to instead ask for a discount off of the house. But like I said, we can go over that in person with your unique situation at that time. Again, disclaimer, this video is specific to Arizona real estate and does not apply to other states outside of Arizona. If you have any questions on the information that you've seen in this video, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put all my contact information below. My name is Brent Wofford. I am a licensed real estate agent in the state of Arizona, specifically a realtor with Keller Williams Arizona Realty. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, please, if you could help me out, hit the subscribe button below to my channel. You can see videos like this. I also do fun videos in Northern Arizona, and I do home tours as well. So, and give me a like if you like this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.